Welcome back to another episode of Rooted and Restored. We are currently in a series talking about relationships, families, couples, marriage, anything to do with somebody else in our lives. And we did an episode that I'm already getting some really great feedback about. Just talking about what it is that happens in relationships, why sometimes relationships are challenging, what to do about those challenges, how they teach us new things. And so some of my couples actually already said to me, Cal or Lisa, why are you talking about us? So it's a very relatable conversation that we had in our June podcast. And this happens to be our July podcast. And we promised you we were going to go in two different directions. And today we are going to talk about this very important question, and often a very stigmatized question, is when do I leave? Or when do I separate? Or when is this relationship toxic enough for me to separate completely? And so we're going to unpack that a little bit today because in our last podcast, we really talked about how important it is to do the work in these relationships. But sometimes that work, it doesn't come to the places we want. Sometimes the goals that we have for ourselves and for the relationship aren't always achievable. And we're going to unpack that today. So without further ado, I'm honored to be here with Callie. And as always, she's going to extract some of this information from me. I have the honor and privilege as the CEO and founder of Rooted to be our family and couple therapist. And I am just thrilled to be able to bring this content to our podcast. And as always, this podcast is meant to bring or illuminate the information that we find is happening in our sessions so that maybe you can feel like you're able to bring it outside of the session a little bit more frequently, or you can share it with somebody that is important to you. And if any of this resonates, we always encourage folks to visit us on our website. And we also offer a 15-minute free consult call that gives you an opportunity to explore if any of this work feels important for you to do. So without further ado, let's unpack this.
Awesome. So we kind of have like a handful of questions, and I think as always, we're just going to kind of see where this conversation takes us. Sometimes we have a plan in our head and it goes elsewhere. So I think going back to what you just named, right, a lot of people start with the question, right, should I stay or should I leave? And that's like maybe the starting point of where they're kind of navigating things. And I guess, do you think that is the right place to start when navigating that? Or do you think some other questions or other places or where the starting point is?
It's a great question, Cal. And what I think is important to say to that also before I answer that in its completeness is just to say that that is an indicator. If you have reached a point where you're going, should I leave or should I stay? I think we need to pay attention to what has happened. How much have you been tolerating whatever you've been tolerating? How many years, how many months, how many hours has it been? And let that be an indicator that at some level, your nervous system and your awareness is going, this can no longer exist like this. And so I think it's really important that when people think about that question, we first need to go inside and ask that deeper question, you know, like, well, what is really going on here? And then from a clinical standpoint, when somebody asks me that question, of course, they always say to me, Lisa, I know you can't tell me, right? And that's true. That isn't our job. I'm not here to tell you to go or stay. My job is to help you unpack that. Your job is to help people unpack that. But the reality is, the bigger question for me when somebody asks that question is, how much work have you done? Right? How much growth has happened? How much growth has happened inside that family system? How much growth has happened inside that coupleship? Is there a possibility for more? Have you unpacked that wound deeper? And if the answer is no, my encouragement, unless there is abuse, constant deception, continued betrayal, these sort of things, my encouragement is to say, hey, sit with that for a little longer and let's explore what it looks like to grow inside yourself. Tony says this all the time, one of my mentors, 2 sickies don't make a welly, right? Yeah. And so if you are unwell and your partner is unwell, you can expect an unwell relationship. If you are not growing and your partner or family member or child is not growing, the relationship struggles to grow. So let's sit with that and let's choose to grow inside of ourselves. And then we can assess the dynamics after you feel like you've put in the effort to do that.
I think that can be a good advice or some good knowledge for somebody in other people's lives, whether like you're a friend or you're a mentor. Also, not everybody's a therapist, but what does it look like to encourage the people in your life to look inward instead of always looking outward at other people and their thoughts? Because everybody around you in your environment has their own opinion based on their own life experiences. Like, nobody else is in your marriage or in your relationship, so nobody can truly answer that question besides yourself, right?
Oh, that's big, right? Yes. And how many people have opinions around us, right? And the minute they hear a friend being hurt, a family member being hurt, or they're in a situation where they feel like they need to protect you or that sort of thing, I mean, it's immediate. You got to get out of that situation. You got to take care of that. You got to do this, this, and this. And you're right, that feels really noisy to a lot of folks. And so it does feel important to make sure that that's a feature of today's conversation, is that you have to be confident. Decisions that you make need to come from in here, not out there.
Which is hard because I don't think that is a daily practice that a lot of people walk about life living, right? Whether it's turning to friends, family members, social media, a lot of times people do look outward for advice instead of looking inward first.
Oh, wow. And we use metaphors often, and I like to scuba dive. I haven't done it in a long time. But one of the features of our training is that if you get too far underwater, sometimes you can not know where top and bottom is, which is crazy for people to believe, but you can get disoriented. And I think sometimes in relationships, in families, when we've tolerated things for so long, it feels unsafe to make a decision because we can't see up or down. It's so foggy for us, and we stop trusting ourselves if we ever did. And so that's why we become vulnerable to other people's opinions and other people's experiences. That might be why somebody's listening to this podcast today, is because they've lost the gauge of where they are. Are they up? Are they down? Are they sideways? And so really important to make sure that that's a clear picture. The work that we do when asking, should I leave or should I stay, is, do you trust yourself to make healthy decisions? And are you trusting yourself to do the growth that is being called inside of you?
Do you feel like when you have couples come into your office that question tends to come along with like a very large life transition that's happening in the home? Or do you feel like that's normal day-to-day life where that question starts to come up?
It's usually a question that's related to exhaustion, right? Or something very big has come out that's been a secret for a long time. And so it often comes as like a reaction to something that could have been longstanding, but it also could have been just recently found out. I just found out she's cheating on me. I just found out he's spending money that I didn't know about. I just found out that she's talking to all the family members about me. But it also could be like, hey, subtly, this drinking has been continuing to get out of control, or slowly we've drifted away, or I just can't tolerate the disconnection anymore, or the anger outbursts. And so sometimes that's 10, 15 years.
And something else that comes up for me as you say that too, like learning how to sit in things, right, and not reacting out of emotion, because when you find out huge events like that are taking place that are a shock to you or betrayal, right, it's like instant reaction. But what does it look like for you to be able to sit on it for 24 to 48 hours, being able to talk to your support system, being able to process inward before making a rash decision and like upping and leaving, or when you have kids in the household and different dynamics like that?
Oh boy. And Callie, that speaks to the work that you do, right? What a gift to your nervous system and to the family system as a whole, if something like that has just been unveiled, not making these rash decisions right away, but slowing things down. And maybe it is a temporary separation for, establishment of what's going on here. Maybe it's separating bedrooms for a period, but not instantly. Like, we're buying a new house, we're going on vacation for 6 months, we're whatever it is, trying to slow things down and allow a process to take shape to unpack that more objectively, if possible, more calmly.
Because, right, it doesn't only help you, but then it helps the other people that are a part of it that also aren't navigating it. So they don't have all the pieces to understand the decisions that you're making in those moments.
That's right.
Because even when you sit down and you're thinking about them and you are making these thought out processes for a kid, it can still feel very sudden and very shocking.
Yeah. And not only is the pause important, but getting support is really important. And sometimes that's when really intensive support is necessary. And that sometimes is challenging for folks. Like, you want me to go to therapy every week? You want me to go multiple hours a week? You want me to go to an intensive session? You want me to put 3 kids in therapy and our like that is a calling that comes across here that like sometimes can feel overwhelming for folks. But yes, you didn't get here overnight, and you haven't been able to unpack it yourself. So if possible, get some supports. And if it's not therapy, it's your church. If it's not church, it's a support group, maybe your recovery group, or a different group in the community, this sort of thing. Absolutely don't try to do this alone.
And I think the idea of that can be so shocking to people because it's very normalized for us to put a Band-Aid on things and just chug along and like figure it out. And like there's requirements, your routine, like it keeps on going. But the idea of pausing everything and being like, okay, like I can't go to the gym this next week because like therapy comes first because we're really fighting for this right now is not as common.
So good, Callie. You said something about a Band-Aid. I think it's really important for couples, families to understand that if you're at this point of saying, should I stay or should I go? You have been putting a Band-Aid on something for a long time. And maybe it's a Band-Aid that was invisible to you. Maybe it was subconscious to you, but it's been something that you've been doing for more than probably you want to admit. And there's probably been yellow flags, orange flags, red flags that either because life has been challenging for you or you've had these experiences throughout your life that have been normalized, it is sometimes hard to see those things or even admit to it. You know, how many times have I talked to a couple or a family who's been like, I kind of knew this was going on, or we had a betrayal wound 10 years ago and I thought it was over. We stuffed it under, we had a child, we moved on from it, but that wound is still very much there. And then when something suspicious or pokes that wound, it's all reignited again because it was never addressed. So Band-Aids, however helpful they are, they can also cover things up that need to be unpacked. And to your point, I mean, that's part of this process. How long has that Band-Aid been there, and is there infection underneath it?
And I think alluding to our last podcast, right, like the importance of also being able to do the inner work to figure out where the attachments are to your own childhood, right? Because sometimes you've grown up knowing that it is just putting a Band-Aid on it and moving on, or like this big betrayal happens, but it's like, okay, like when we have a kid or this happens, like it'll get better, it'll go away, but that 10 times out of 10 typically doesn't happen.
Right. And sometimes the Band-Aid is on our own stuff, right? Where like I was with a client earlier this week and I said, how true have you been to your boundaries? You know? And she said, I don't know how to hold boundaries. So we used the metaphor of putting a line in the sand. And I said, what is it going to look like to leave here today and stay on this side? That's her work, right? If her partner doesn't change or anything changes, she is learning to speak up for herself and not move from that place of saying, no, I will not tolerate whatever this thing is that I'm trying to work through. But, you know, so often, and in this metaphor, we talked about how she kicks that line away and then she finds herself moving closer and closer and closer to things that don't honor or value her anymore. And now she's feeling like really resentful. But the work is really staying on that side of the fence for herself.
And knowing or alluding, that's just as important as the other side, because sometimes in certain dynamics, I think the person that has the more outward behavior, or maybe that is the one that acts on the betrayal, right, seems like, oh, they're the one who like needs to do the work and needs to fix these things. But the other partner on the other side that does need to uphold boundaries or work inwardly on their confidence or self-esteem or whatever's coming up for them is just as important, because if they're not, right, then they're enabling the other behavior.
Big time, right? We say this all the time, but it's a feature of the work I do. I always say there's somebody who makes messes and somebody who cleans them up. You can't stay in relationship married to, like, if you don't marry to those roles, right? And so to your point, yeah, the cleaner upper constantly is enabling the mess maker. And that becomes like something that needs to be, you know, you need to clean up yourself, not your partner, not the family dynamics.
Yeah. So just alluding, they're both equally as important. even though a lot of times the person that's making the mess, their actions and behaviors are bigger and louder. So you pay attention to them more.
Oh, so good, Cal.
Okay. So what do you think, coming into your office with different couples and relationships, what are some maybe behaviors or signs that you feel like draw the line of where like separation should truly be considered, or where you do feel like the dynamics are workable?
So good. So I almost automatically can see in a couple if they're going to be able to feel nourished by the therapeutic environment. If a couple comes in and I can hear them say things like, I know I'm contributing to this, or I know I need support, or I can see where I'm frustrated. They can be doing a lot of blaming and shifting that too. But if I can hear that, if I can hear them say, I got issues, right? She's this, but I got issues. Or he's this, but I can see where I have room to grow. We have a therapeutic environment that will nourish growth and change. But if somebody comes into the office and it's like this, and this is their fault, therefore, and they're pointing the fingers and they are perfectly happy with who they are, that makes a therapeutic alliance very difficult, and it makes work inside of a relationship very difficult. So some examples might be, I cheated on her because she won't have sex with me. I'm not gonna apologize for that. She's been withholding sex from me from 10 years, and I have sexual needs, and I'm not ashamed of that. It's her fault. She wants to keep sex from me. Well, then I'm going to go find it other places. I'm going to be addicted to pornography. I'm going to masturbate every morning. That's one scenario, right? Where another scenario might be like, I'm going to spend all the money I can. He yells and he screams and he spends everything he can. So I'm going to spend it. And if we're in debt, that's his problem, because this is how I survive in this relationship. I mean, those are two really extremes, but these are the kinds of things that are like, I'm not apologizing for the dysfunction that I brought to this relationship. I am who I am. I'm not going to stop drinking. I'm not going to stop gambling. I don't see a problem with that, right? If I need to spank our kids and you don't like it, that's your problem. Those are dismissive tendencies that leave people feeling like, well, then where do we go from here? And so if people aren't willing to grow, if they're not willing to do the inner work, it's very hard to grow inside of a relationship.
Do you feel like you have couples or one side of a couple that comes in presenting that way in the first session, but maybe by the end of the session or a few sessions in, they're able to start shifting and being able to look at themselves and see their own contribution to the situation?
Yeah, the reality is if they're inside of my office, it's likely they have some sort of growth mindset, Cal. You don't come to therapy thinking that you're just going to blame most of the time. You have to surrender to something when you make that initial call, when you say, hey, I'm going to commit to this time. I'm going to commit to being vulnerable. There is, that is kind of like the first maybe
stepping stone.
Sure. Or like for me, like the first prong of like saying, okay, you're here in my office. There's part of you that wants to explore this, right? But sometimes people come and it's like, I just want to use this space to finally be heard and tell you how terrible a human you are. And then that's when I challenge them. And I did last week and said, what is really the goal here? I mean, are you really wanting a coupleship, or are you wanting to be right? And if that's the feature of the conversation, that makes it very difficult. But I would say that probably most people listening, their partner hasn't said yes to coming, or they've said yes to placate and they come once in a while, but they wouldn't initiate the process on their own. And so somebody listening that's thinking like, is separation, divorce, should I stay or should I go? Like, is your partner interested? Is your family member interested in even coming to explore what it might look like, or is that not even a possibility? And let that be a yellow, orange, or red flag for you.
I feel like something that I've noticed for you, or as I've watched you working with couples, but also I think like stereotype or people's assumptions, sometimes you experience arguing, right? Which is a normal part of a relationship. How do you feel like you handle arguments, or when couples are very combative with each other in your office, or it's a very consistent thing, or maybe they try coming in and it's like, okay, here we are again.
Yeah, that's a good sign. That means you're fighting for something. So while arguing can feel scary, while arguing can be dysfunctional, arguing still means you care. It still means you want to fight. It's when a couple says, I have no more energy for this. They're apathetic to it. They're like, screw you. Like, they just drown out. That's when that's a really huge risk factor right there when somebody becomes apathetic. But if they're arguing, I love that, right? Because it gives me something to work with. And it gives them it shows they're wanting to fight for something. Even if it's to fight their point, they're still here engaged in the argument because they care. And they might not see it that way, but there's energy coming towards each other. And that's a beautiful thing for a therapist.
Do you feel like sometimes the argument in your office can be a safety mechanism for the couple instead of doing the deeper work with you?
Sure, absolutely. And we talked about that in our last podcast, right? We do this all the time. It's the surface things. It's harder to get underneath the surface. It's easier to stay angry than it is to be sad. It's easier to stay angry than it is to get vulnerable. Like, hey, when you spent that money on those, I don't know, things that don't matter to me, it scares me because growing up, we didn't have food in the fridge and I don't want that for our children and so on and so forth, right? That's harder to do than to just get angry and say, why are you spending money frivolously like that? Yeah.
I love being able to watch you challenge the clients, or when I've heard you in supervision and different things, being able to put a pause on the argument sometimes, like being able to say like, right, you can do this at home. Like, let's do this, or let me challenge you with something else, to allow them to get to that deeper work.
Absolutely. And that's what we say often. Like, hey guys, you can argue at home, but we can do something different in here today. And that's usually what happens, right? When we stop and we go, hey, you can do this in every other aspect of your life. What else can we be doing here? And that's what I'm here. That's why you're here doing the work.
Yeah, being able to utilize you as a resource while you're there, because you can't go home with them.
Right. That's exactly it. Yeah, let's get deep. Let's get deeper. And sometimes it sounds like, hey guys, I don't want to disrespect the situation, but let's unpack this deeper. I had a client who said, hey, she's been giving me breadcrumbs. She's been flirting and cheating with, this other relationship. I found out in November, but I just found out more information a couple weeks ago. Like, I'm sick and tired of her lying to me. This has been our ongoing relationship for 10 years. And then her retaliation was, you've lied to me our entire relationship too. And you had another relationship in our marriage too. And we've never addressed that. I just moved on. And so it just opened up the door to go, okay, I want to respect that this situation is current and present, and it has a lot of, emotions connected to it. But can we get underneath the surface to say, why? Why have you both tolerated this behavior? What else is going on? And then, of course, we use the hula hoop attachment theory, and we started, and the husband left with an entirely different experience than blame. She's bad, she's bad, she's bad. And now here we are going, oh, wow, we have mutually offered dysfunction to this relationship. We're both at play. And all of a sudden, both of them are softened. And now we have something to work with.
And right, you're sending them home with a different perception of the situation.
That's right.
Right? They're not leaving, both ignited, stuck on the same thing. They've found a way to connect and be able to understand each other on a different
the
level.
betrayal's still there, no question, right? But it gives us a bigger understanding as to why that betrayal might be there.
Good. Okay, so contempt is one of the strongest predictors of divorce. So what exactly does that mean to you, and why do you think it can be so destructive in relationships?
Yeah, and so one of the frameworks that I lean into a lot with couples therapy is from the Gottman Institute. They are a really amazing couple that have done a lot of research to support therapists and help them unpack these things, because this is not easy work, right? And so what I feel like when I hear the word contempt, and what I want to break down for everyone, is that, when you hear the word contempt of court, right? Like, you're not in alliance with what the court's calling you to. Contempt is, I have reached a point in my relationship where I can't see my partner, my family member with any sort of goodness, right? All I see inside of myself when I think about them is how much I hate them, what a bully they are, how much they've stolen from me, how disrespectful they've been. When you've reached a point like that in relationship, it is very hard to create any sort of healing, any sort of bridge towards somebody, because you've decided, I am shut down from that person and I can't see their humanity. And if that has happened in relationships, it is very, very difficult to create repair. And so it's a strong indicator of whether or not a couple, a family, a relationship is repairable. Right?
Do you feel like when a couple or one side of a couple gets to that point that they even enter your office?
No, I've seen contempt in my office. Yeah. But when a strong therapist can call it out and say, do you even like your partner? Why are you here? Is there even a possibility that this relationship can heal with this kind of a mindset? And that is when the change can happen, or they answer the question and they say, actually, I don't think so. There's too much hurt here. Actually, the kinds of things that he or she have done, I can't overcome. Okay, we're having a different conversation.
Well, because sometimes people walk around with that mentality already, but until somebody names it for them or extracts it for them, right? They can't even name that that's how they're operating.
That's right. Yeah. And some people don't know that's even like an unhealthy thing, right? They've probably been at the, at the forefront or at somebody else's contempt. This has been a learned behavior for them, so to speak. And so if they've experienced contempt throughout their life, they don't even know what it is. It's just their normal.
Or right, like what they watched growing up, right? If mom and dad were exhibiting, or they felt like, my parents are together, they've been together for 40 years, but like my dad hates my mom. That's normal. That's
normal. Right. They don't talk, he talks crap about her behind her back, all of that. Yep. Normal.
Okay. Okay. So when couples come into counseling talking about divorce, what are some indicators that they are still willing to do the work?
Yeah, I think we've kind of shared that, but maybe like just to answer that more specifically, because somebody listening right now is looking for answers, right? And so if that's you, or you're going to share this with somebody that is looking for answers, you need to unpack this in a real way. And so what was the question specifically so I can answer it?
Yeah. When couples come into counseling discussing divorce, what are some indicators that they're still wanting to do the work?
Yeah. And we've talked about that, but just to answer that question more specifically, it's, do you have a growth mindset? Do you have a willingness to see your partner for their humanness? Are you able to climb deep inside of yourself and see how you've contributed to the relationship? Is your partner able to do that? Is the family member able to do that? And if those questions are yes, you are in a good seat for coming to therapy. You're in a good seat for considering staying as you do the work. But if you can't answer those questions, that's when we want to say like, hey, what's really going on here? And if this person has constantly deceived you, if this person is constantly betraying you, if substances are a problem and those are not being addressed, if there is, just no communication, if any sort of sexual intimacy, emotional intimacy, if all that has disappeared and there's no effort towards rebuilding those things, there's a bigger issue at hand.
When you are sitting with couples and they're deciding between navigating if the relationship is unhealthy, which we've talked about when deciding that, or if the pain and the work feels really overwhelming, how do you feel like, or what's something that you feel like you would say to a couple to help them navigate that, to be able to maybe choose or help them choose to sit in the hard?
Yeah, I'd want them to say, like, can you see yourself without each other? Can you see yourself separate from this relationship? Can you see a life disconnected from these experiences? And not because you're reacting, but because you want to be responsive. You want to sit with yourself and you really want to answer that. Are you afraid? And are you making decisions out of fear? Or are you truly standing in a place of confidence and self-worth and connection and saying, I deserve a different outcome? Right? I don't want to tolerate dysfunction anymore. I don't want to continue to be abused. I don't want to continue finding myself at the end of every month without our mortgage payment because he or she is spending it somewhere else. I deserve a different life, and I'm willing to take the risk to do something different. Or absolutely, we've built this beautiful life. We're in a season that's challenging, and it's worth sticking it out because I can see that they want to be different. I see that we both are interested in finding out what's really going on. It doesn't seem clear what this looks like, but I've seen him start his AA meetings. I've seen her start to control her anger differently. I've seen her start to, become more emotionally warm to me. They're making efforts to do family dinners now or take ownership for their behavior. It's not perfect, but it's happening.
Right? Nothing changes if nothing changes.
That's right.
And when you start to see your partner show up differently or hear you and validate your feelings and choosing to put effort in, right, it also provokes different feelings within inside you.
That's right. That's right. And sometimes we just need a pause, right? I mean, it doesn't always just happen overnight, but if there's movement towards each other, a movement towards a different goal, trust that process too. And then maybe that's where the work happens with your therapist, and you say something like, how long are you willing to wait until you see these goals achieved? And if 3 months is practical, if 6 months is practical, if 2 days is what you're saying, that's also okay.
And even like just assessing, like as a couple, your goals change pretty frequently. So if you're not spending the time to dedicate to assessing that, a lot of times, like when those big life transitions happen, like the kids exit the home and all these things and these emotions get brought up, or things feel heavy, or if they've been heavy, you just haven't been addressing them, right?
That's right. And we have to be mindful of that. Yep. And what is this season of life teaching me, right, is the first question I want us to ask ourselves. And that goes back to the very beginning of our conversation. If that is your first question, what is this teaching me? What is going on inside of me? Then you can walk with greater clarity for the relationships in your life.
So as we wrap up today, what's something that if somebody is navigating a situation where they're debating separation or doing the work and trying to stick it out, that you would like them to hear today? And also maybe just alluding to a tool that we have for this podcast.
Absolutely. So you're asking the question, should I stay or should I go today? And while I'm not here to say, yes, you should or no, you shouldn't, there's just some very important things that I want you to consider. Have you done your work? Do you trust yourself? And have you stuck to your boundaries? And what is your partner demonstrating as a result of those boundaries? What is your family member showing you? What is the best friend in your life showing you? If they are showing you that your goals are as important to them and they're willing to do the work, you have information right there that you can keep going. If this person is continuing to deceive you, if this person is continuing these dysfunctional behaviors that are hurting you, if these people are demonstrating just a shift of blame or pushing away your feelings, your needs, and they're unwilling to do the work, there's a very, very real chance that you are considering the opportunity to exit this relationship. And that is something I want you to lean into. You should not be working harder than the other people in your life. You deserve people that want the relationship as much as you do. And if they don't, I want you to do your work so that you can stand strong on your side of the street, ask for your needs to be met, and if they aren't being met, to make decisions accordingly. And so we have developed a tool, just because this is such a big question in our office and we want to slow things down. We'll attach it to, I guess you'll provide the link when we send out the podcast, but it's just a quick assessment. It's not clinical in nature. It's just something we developed so that you can get more objective, but it's just kind of extrapolating what we've talked about today and bringing home like, hey, if these things are happening, what is the chance that you're in a relationship that can grow? And what's the chance that you're not? And I think that's an important thing. And that's why we developed this tool, as a way of just kind of saying, like, take a deeper look and make sure that you are truly assessing the situation from all angles. That's our goal, is slow things down, have better information, and be as objective as possible. Right. And trust the process. Yeah.
Awesome.
Okay. So on that note, this podcast can be for anyone. We're all in relationships. So although we've talked about couples a lot, because that's a feature of the work I do, families are a major part of this. Dysfunction happens everywhere. Best friends, roommates, all sorts of things come with relationships. And so allow this to maybe mold into whatever capacity or whatever spaces that you are inviting into your world. And if this rings true for you and you want to do the deeper work, as we mentioned at the beginning, visit our website. We have a 15-minute free consult call. Just get a little bit more curious about yourself. And as always, if there's more information or other things that you're interested in, get curious with us. Send this along to people that you know. And our next episode will be, what does it look like if you stay? Right? And how does that kind of allow for change when somebody has deceived you or these things look a little different for you? So we'll see you next time.